Whoa! This is fantastic. Welcome. We are so glad you're here. I'm Michael Bungay Stania, MBS, as some people call me. I've got my glorious, glamorous co-host, LGO, Laura Gassner-Otting, and Ozan Varol. And we are pretty stoked that you are here with us for kind of the first time we've ever done anything like this together. How to truly, deeply, madly, incredibly trust yourself. And LGO and Ozan, I'm not sure if you're looking at the comments, but people have already started signing in about where they're coming in from the world. It's pretty fabulous. There's Yorkshire, there's Krakow, there's Chicago, there's New Mexico. It is a global phenomena. I think I have the least reasonable time out because I'm coming from Canberra. This is actually my childhood bedroom, and it is currently 3 a.m. So I may fall asleep anytime during this. So if that happens, you guys will just have to pick it up and carry on without me. But before we introduce each other, we're going to do that kind of formally, where it's going to let you know who we are and who we are and where we've been and what we do. I would love people to tell us in the comments, what's one thing that you're hoping to get from this summit? I mean, you have not only signed up, and we've had thousands of people sign up, but you've actually shown up, which is delightful. And if you're watching the recording, that's fine. We love you too, but we really appreciate people who've shown up to do this live with us. And you know that this is about deeply trusting yourself. And I'm going to talk about, or LGO is going to be talking about how to trust yourself when you don't feel ready. Ozan's going to be talking about how to trust yourself when you're not quite sure what you're good at. I'm going to be talking about how to trust yourself when you're not even sure if you're ready. And LGO about how do you navigate success. But those are the broad headlines. What's the one thing that you're hoping to get from this? And Ozan and LGO, I'm not sure if you're seeing the comments. What are you picking up from people that they want to get from this? I'm seeing Elizabeth going, hey, I just want encouragement. That's great.
Yeah, I'm seeing clarity, insight and discovery from Rick, inspiration, confidence where I'm not confident from Mike. Really great stuff.
Yeah, and Jen,
Dana is saying to trust myself enough to finally step away from my steady job. That's a big step, Dana.
It is. This is great. Well, look, let's actually introduce ourselves, because I know we've got 90 minutes, but I suspect we've got slightly too much good stuff for you in 90 minutes. And I'm always tempted to just kind of chat with people in the comments because it's amazing, but I think we probably got to get cracking. So I'm going to start off introducing the brilliant woman next to me over there, LGO.
Wait, no, that way.
I met LGO. This person wrote to me a few years ago going, hi, you don't really know me. I've written a book. Would you mind blurbing my book? And I wrote back to her going, look, I don't know who the hell you are. I'm a very, very important person. I don't even know why I'm talking to people like you. Anyway,
True story.
LGO has never let me forget that, because she was writing to me about her wonderful book, Limitless. And I'm not quite sure how you managed to forgive me for that, LGO, but you forgave me and we became friends, and we've hung out quite a few times since then. I'm going to just tell you a little bit about her. I've written some stuff down so I don't forget it. She has had a pretty storied career. She has been a presidential appointee. She worked in Bill Clinton's White House and was instrumental in helping set up AmeriCorps. She then set up her own executive search firm, and we're going to tap into that wisdom for sure. Which she then, and I love this, she then sold that to her employees. I think, if you're an entrepreneur, you're always thinking about your exit. And one of the things that isn't talked about often is how do you give legacy to your organization? And one of the ways you do that is you sell it to your employees. She is an athlete. What you can't see is that she has got amazing guns. So she shows up, and I mean, she is a mean person on an indoor rowing machine. And here's what's really cool. She has a brand new TEDx talk out, and it's literally a week out, and it's already well north of 100,000 views. And what's exciting about it for me, because I've seen it and it's terrific, but also I suspect for LGO, is that it's on the topic of Wonderhell. And Wonderhell is the topic of her brand new book. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that brand new book. And one of the bonuses you get by being here is an early chapter. You're going to be the first person to read an early chapter from Wonderhell, but it's really taken off. So you may have seen LGO on Good Morning America and Oprah Daily, and now you're seeing her with me and with Ozan. So LGO, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I think one of the ways that I was able to forgive you, Michael, is because of your great sense of humor. And when you wrote to me about blurbing your new book, I wrote back, no, because I'm so important. How are you even talking to me? But I was so thrilled to do it. And you gave me such great advice and feedback. And you taught me how to trust myself when I didn't know what I was doing when that book came out. So I am so thrilled to be here with you, with Ozan for this today. So should I introduce Ozan now?
Introduce that other dude.
Okay, that other
Rocket
dude
scientist.
is, he's just kind of like, whatever. He's the dumb one of the group, obviously, right? I mean, you're the Rhodes Scholar. He's the rocket scientist. Clearly, I'm the one with the intellectual heft in this group. But what I will say is that I didn't know Ozan until MBS introduced me to him through this. And of course, because I spent a career as a recruiter, and what I do is I like to talk people and get to know them, I have done a deep dive about our pal, Ozan Varol. And I call him our pal, even though, I'm sort of new to this little club here. But Ozan, you don't know me. You're stuck with me now. So just so you know, Ozan is a rocket scientist, but he didn't just settle for being a rocket scientist. He also decided to become an award-winning professor. He's a #1 best-selling author, and he is one of the world's foremost experts in creativity, innovation, and critical thinking. Now, here's what's pretty cool about Ozan. He didn't just grow up with like a silver spoon in his mouth, able to do whatever he wanted. He comes from Istanbul, Turkey. And he grew up in a family with no English speakers whatsoever, but he learned English as a second language. He moved to the United States. He found himself at 17 years old at Cornell University, where he majored in, that really easy major, astrophysics. And he became part of the group that built the 2003 Mars exploration rovers. Now, that's pretty cool, right? Sending 2 rovers up to Mars. But Ozan, you didn't just stop there. You were like, what else would be pretty cool? I'd like to actually study the law, and I'd like to become an expert in that. And I would like to graduate first in my class and become one of the most beloved law school professors in my school's history. So, that's kind of cool. Let's also help people make leaps on Earth too. Why not? So here's what's pretty neat. You're not just taking my word for it. You're also taking Adam Grant's word for it. You're taking Susan Cain's word for it. You're taking Dan Pink's word for it. You're taking Malcolm Gladwell's word for it. And you're taking Bill Gates' word for it, that he is one of the smartest people out there. And his book, Think Like a Rocket Scientist, is actually named one of the top business and leadership books in 2020 by all those, slouches who I just mentioned. Now, he's also got a new book coming out, which I cannot wait to read. And it's going to be called Awaken Your Genius. So we're not just thinking like rocket scientists, we're actually finding our genius within. Awaken Your Genius, escape conformity, ignite creativity, and become extraordinary. So that's pretty cool. I, for one, can't wait for your session today, Ozan.
Thank you so much, Laura, for that really kind introduction. I'm so grateful that we crossed paths through this summit. I think that honestly, one of the biggest gifts that this has given me, aside from the opportunity to speak with all of you this morning, has been to meet Laura. So thank you so much for that. And now I have the pleasure to introduce Michael Bungay Stainer. So Michael, I first came across Michael's work, I think this was maybe 5 years ago. I took this class, Alt MBA, from Seth Godin. And when you enroll in this class, you get this like big box of books for you to read. And it's really intimidating. And I picked up Michael's book because it was really short. And I'm like, okay, I can read this pretty quickly. And I devoured it in one sitting. It was an incredible book, one that has stuck with me to this day. At the time I was using it, I was a professor, so I had to do a lot of coaching of my students in and out of the classroom, and I found the questions incredibly helpful in doing that. But then, and this is where things are really interesting, is I started to use the questions in the book to coach myself. So to this day, on a regular basis, on a weekly basis, I still use questions from Michael's book to figure out what I'm thinking, to figure out what my challenges are, and to coach myself. So it's one of my favorite books of all time, and certainly my favorite book on coaching. And it's not just me, it's also Seth Godin's favorite book on coaching. And I know Michael was on Brene Brown's podcast where he had the honor of coaching Brene using some of the methods in the book. But let me step back and say a couple more things about Michael. So he's the author of not just The Coaching Habit. He's actually the author of 7 books which between them have sold over 1 million copies, which is incredible. His last book, How to Begin, helps people be more ambitious for themselves and for the world. Michael was a Rhodes Scholar. He founded a training and development company, Box of Crayons, that has taught coaching skills to hundreds of thousands of people around the world. He's been married for 30 years. He's just done so many incredible things, and so grateful that he decided to organize a summit and invite Laura and me to join.
Hey, thank you, Ozan. Look, it is exciting. And just to repeat, you're going to get chapters as kind of the bonus from this. We're offering you kind of cool bonuses as being part of this, and we'll send you to that page soon enough. But you're going to get chapters from each of our new books. Laura, Wonderhell, Ozan's Awaken Your Genius. My new book is going to be called How to Work with Almost Anyone. And you're going to be the first. You're going to be our first readers of that. So we're pretty excited / nervous for that. All right. We're going to, enough about us. Let's do some teaching. So LG, I'm going to call you up to set up the next session with Ozan leading us.
Yeah, so the next session that we are going to have, we're going to spend about 15 minutes or so talking about how do we identify what we're truly good at. Now, look, we never feel quite masterful, right? We never feel ready. We never feel like we're perfect. We never feel like the timing's right. So how do we identify what we're truly good at so that we can actually move forward? Now, I spent 20 years, as you mentioned, doing executive recruiting. And here's the thing. We used to put together these absolutely incredible, unbelievable position description. That's like the person has to have this number of years of experience and this much depth of knowledge of the horizon and these kinds of graduate degrees. And they have to walk on water. And everything that was in there was that the person had to be absolutely ideal, absolutely perfect. And so I would have people who would call me up and say, well, I was going to apply for that job you had last year, but I didn't because I wasn't quite perfect. I didn't meet all the requirements. Now, there were always a handful of people who were like, I don't have any of the requirements, but I'm going to shoot my shot anyway. And those happen to always never be the most qualified candidates. It turns out that there are no perfect candidates for anything. So you two are going to have a little moment here where you're going to discuss how do we figure out, how do we trust ourselves when we don't always have all the bullet points checked off?
Excellent. Thank you. Let me kick this off. And I'm going to kick it off with a personal story. And then I'm going to ask a question to everyone who's chiming in and ask you to write your response in the chat. And the personal story, Laura already alluded to. So I grew up in Istanbul. And at the time, we didn't have reliable access to electricity. So we'd get these blackouts all the time. And they would terrify me as like a 5-year-old boy. And to distract me, my dad came up with a game. He would light a bunch of candles. He'd grab my soccer ball. He would rotate the soccer ball around one of the candles to show me how the earth rotated around the sun. Those were my very first astronomy lessons, and I was hooked. My moonshot at that young age becoming an astronaut one day. And I did all of these things to set myself up to be able to make that dream a reality. So I learned English as a second language. I taught myself how to do computer programming. I researched how to get into colleges in the United States and then ended up getting into Cornell to study astrophysics. And I remember when I was 17 years old, so as a high school senior, I've just been admitted to this dream program at Cornell University. And I'm researching what the astronomy department at Cornell is up to. And I see that one of the professors is in charge of this. He's a scientific lead of this planned mission to Mars. Now, the story that Laura told us as a recruiter really comes into play here and really resonated because there was no job listing. I just was compelled to draft him an email saying, look, here's my resume. I know there was no job listing, but I really, really want to work on this Mars mission. So I drafted this email, and right as I was about to click send, this chorus of voices filled my head. The voices saying, you're not good enough. Another voice said, you're a skinny kid with a funny name from a country halfway around the world. What could you possibly contribute? Another voice said, there is no job listing. Why would you even apply for a job that doesn't exist? And no, by the way, these voices, they were not my internal voices. These are voices that I picked up from society. So decades of societal conditioning that tells us we're not good enough, we're not ready enough, to continuously doubt ourselves. I closed my eyes, I connected with my own inner self, and I clicked send. That email catalyzed a series of events that completely changed my life. It got me a seat on the operations team for the 2003 Mars Exploration Rovers project. It led me to write a book called Think Like a Rocket Scientist that became a bestseller. I wouldn't be speaking to you right now if I, as a 17-year-old high school senior, if I had not sent that email to that professor. So fast forward to today, I still struggle with imposter syndrome. I still feel not ready enough to do the thing. Whatever I'm about to launch something new, I always feel really heavy. I don't know that I can carry the load. But whenever I do that, I connect with that moment, with that 17-year-old moment where I clicked send, even when I was filled with self-doubt and even when I did not feel ready. So that moment becomes my own anchor in moments of self-doubt. I would love for you, those who are listening, close your eyes if you need to, and think back to a moment in your own life where you did not feel ready, but you still successfully took action. So you doubted yourself, you didn't feel qualified, you didn't feel ready, but you still took action and something great resulted. So this could be applying for a job that you didn't feel qualified for. It could be asking for a promotion that you didn't think you deserved. It could be going to school when you didn't feel ready. It could be anything. But this will be, the answer to this question will be your anchoring moment, one that you'll reconnect to whatever you doubt yourself going forward, to remind yourself what amazing things can happen when you do take action, and that you are qualified even if you don't feel so.
You know, and Ozan, we're seeing some comments starting to happen in the comments, which is great. You know, Rebecca going, when I applied for grad school, Tucker saying yes when I got asked to do a TEDx talk. Congratulations, Tucker, on that. Oh, Kathleen becoming the pitcher on the softball team. That's fantastic. Saying yes to God's call to become a pastor from Andy. Fantastic. No, I mean, so many great things. Oh, Pamela, where are you based? Pamela's opened a wine bar when she was 52. I'm a wine drinker. Come, tell me where your wine bar is. I'll come and have a glass of wine with you. And Ozan, I'll just tell a very quick story that's a little similar to this, which was, you know, one of the things I get when I get introduced, it's like, oh, Michael is a Rhodes Scholar, which is, you know, sounds impressive. But what people don't know is the first time I applied for a Rhodes Scholarship, even though they said everybody got an interview on the first round, I didn't even get an interview. And then on the 2 years later, I reapplied to become a Rhodes Scholar. And I spent 2 years wrestling with it. Like, do I do it? The first rejection stung a fair bit. And I applied and I kind of went all in on I'm going to come first or I'm going to come last. So when I got the interview, everybody else was in a blue suit and a white shirt and a red tie or with pearls. And I was wearing a purple suit and a pink tie-dyed tie, and I had long blonde hair. I had big earrings in. And I was like, I'm going to become a distant last, or I'm going to somehow, they're going to make a bet on my difference. And it was that same bet, that same kind of, I'm pushing it in and I'm taking a breath, that really made all the difference, because that changed everything for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love seeing all the comments here of all of these amazing accomplishments that people were able to do when they trusted themselves. And someone mentioned, and I lost sight of the comments here, I think it may have been, yeah, here we go. Peter says, I honestly think this is the magical quality of adolescence that we all tap into and should stay tapped into, which is a sense of relish for healthy risk and invincibility. I think when we're younger, yes, we are able to take healthy risks, but as we grow older, that self-doubt begins to creep in. And as long as we can keep reconnecting to those moments from earlier in our life where we were able to take action, even when we doubted ourselves, the better off we will be. I do want to talk about another. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Can I ask, when you close our eyes and we're summoning up that moment when we've been brave and we backed ourselves sometime in the past, and you're like, you call it an anchoring moment, but what am I trying to connect to? What is it? Is it the physical feeling? Is it just remembering the moment? What's the essence that I'm trying to find that connection back to?
I think it's your inner true self. So like I said, for me at least, the chorus of voices that come in my head to tell me that I'm not qualified enough or I'm not good enough tend to be voices that I picked up from other people. So when I close my eyes and I sink back into that anchoring moment, I'm reconnecting with my inner true self. And in some ways, I'm also reconnecting with my inner child. And that inner child is, as Peter had mentioned in the comments, felt a lot more free to take healthy risk and had this sense of invincibility. And I'm trying to reconnect to that feeling.
Nice.
So those two things are going on for me. And by the way, different feelings might come up for you, but whatever those feelings might be, that anchoring moment where you did something in the past where you doubted yourself, but you still succeeded, ends up being an important one.
That's great. Hey, look, we've got about 5 minutes left on this, Ozan. So let's share one more question. And I think we'd love to see more comments in the chat as well.
For sure. Yeah. So the other question that I wanted to share, and I wanted to ask you, Michael, and I'd love for people to chime in the chat as well, is so this is about identifying your superpowers. And we tend to distrust our superpowers in a way because they come easily to us. Like we value what's hard and we devalue what's easy. We've been convinced, and this is one of those outside voices, outside noise. We've been convinced that if we're not in pain, if we're not constantly grinding and hustling and struggling, we're not doing it right.
Yeah.
But in life, it's possible to create diamonds without immense pressure. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Michael, from your own life. And I'd love everyone to chime in the comment section. What is something that you don't even consider a skill, but other people would? So what feels like play to you, but work to others?
You know, I think I've come to realize that my answer to this, which is, it mostly feels like playing. People really love the coaching habit is it kind of unweirds coaching. It's like I've taken all of coaching and I'm like, here are 7 good questions. And you know, when you talked about the story about picking up the coaching habit in Seth's old MBA, and you're like, oh, this is the short book. I'll read the short book. Well, you know, part of my mantra is I'm going to write the shortest book I can that's the most useful. So in this new book that I'm writing at the moment, it's coming in at like 20,000 words. And I'm looking at all the stuff I've written and abandoned, and that's currently at 35,000 words. So there's this way of like, I can see an elegance and an elegant simplicity and a way of kind of sketching it into a model or a way of a system that works that people find useful. And as soon as you ask that question, I mean, sometimes it's like a bit of a grind, like trying to write a book, restructuring it and all of that. But often somebody will come to me a problem and I'm like, oh, pen and paper, let me, here's a way of seeing it and sketching it. And I'm drawing boxes and circles and I think it goes all the way back to designing dungeons, and when I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons with my mate Peter and I would design it together. I'd imagine the adventure, and he would then design the dungeon. And he went on to become a hotelier. He designed hotels and runs hotels. So I'm like, oh, we weren't just fighting gelatinous cubes and orcs. We were plotting the future of our careers in this. What are you seeing in the comments?
I'm seeing lots of different things. So Francois says creativity and empathy, which have been a theme for sure coming up. Creativity and empathy, holding space, intuition, willing to do hard things, love of learning, creating PowerPoint presentations, says Neil. He actually enjoys them. Cool. You're one of the rare few for sure. But so I'm going to reflect back to what Michael mentioned as well here. But part of the reason why I wanted to ask this question is these are your basic Lego blocks. So if you're thinking about Legos, these are the blocks that you can play around with. And once you identify your own building blocks, you can build different things out of them. So from my perspective, so Michael has this incredible ability, which was manifest in the coaching habit, of taking a really daunting, complicated topic and making it super simple and super short. And that, by the way, is a deceptively difficult thing to do. Like I've written now 3 books And it's so much harder to write a shorter book than to write a longer one, right? And so being able to take a complicated thing and then distill it in a simplified format where everyone can understand and implement right away is really hard to do. And that basic building block isn't just good for writing books. So Michael can take that basic building block and use it to start a business, as he's done. Use it to coach other people. So that those basic building blocks, once you identified them, can be repurposed and reimagined in new ways that you haven't used before.
Brilliant. Now, the other thing I'm good at is being the timekeeper when we're running a session. And I know our time is almost up on this. So Ozan's going to set me up because I'm going to run the next session with LGO. But while Ozan's just doing a little setup for that, here's what I'd love to see in the comments. What, if anything, was most useful or most valuable about what Ozan has just taught you? What are you taking away from that first teaching session? What was most useful or most valuable? Readers of the Coaching Habit will know that that's the learning question number 7 in the Coaching Habit. So Ozan, set us up for this next thing.
So the next theme, or this theme for the next section, is going to be how to be ready when you'll never quite feel ready. And I'll just set this up with a very short story from my life, which harkens back to the Mars Exploration Rovers mission that I worked on. We did not feel ready when we sent the rovers. There was just so much uncertainty about what we would find on Mars when our rovers actually landed onto the surface. And our expectations of what to get from these 2 landing sites ended up being completely and utterly wrong. Like, we could not have been more wrong about what we were going to get when we actually landed on the Martian surface. And so we very quickly had to learn to solve the problems that Mars gave us, as opposed to the problems that we thought we would solve. And I mentioned that story because often, we wait to have perfect information before getting started. But the thing is, you're never going to have perfect information and perfect clarity about what's going to come next. The trick is to start walking before you see a clear path ahead. There is no path until you walk it. Yeah. There is no trailer illuminating what's going to come. The only way to know is to start walking. And with each step you take, you go from darkness to light, from not knowing to knowing. So with that, I'll turn things over to LGO.
No, over to me. I'm going to run the session, and LGO is going to help me out.
Okay, excellent.
That's fine.
Sounds good.
I'm just thinking, it's vaguely daunting launching a book, launching a rover to Mars. I'm like, that might be slightly more daunting. Hey, look, I loved Ozan's session. LJ, what did you take out of Ozan's session?
Oh, I love this idea that we have to go back and remember what it felt like to not be so afraid, right? Like when we were kids, we would go to a class that we'd never had before, algebra, and we wouldn't know what we were doing, and we would fail and we'd struggle and we'd figure it out. And then we get to geometry and we fail and we struggle and we figure it out, and we get to trigonometry. And as kids, we're not supposed to know everything, right? We're not supposed to be confident in our skills, but we learn that failure is where you innovate and you grow and you change and you get better. And so I love this idea of knowing that we can go forward even when we don't know anything. In fact, that's the whole point of the whole adventure is not knowing anything.
So I want to teach a little session around how to get going, particularly when you're a little more nervous as an adult. Like, I'm watching my 19-year-old niece Tilly at the moment. She's traveling in Thailand and Vietnam. And all of us adults are all sitting there going, oh my God, what are you doing? It's scary. But she's like, I just bought a motorbike. I'm driving around Vietnam. And we're like, oh man, the invincibility of youth is fantastic. And I think Ozan's teaching around, okay, so trust yourself, know yourself, get back to that kind of anchoring moment is really powerful. But sometimes that can feel a little bit elusive. And what I'm imagining is a moment where you're like, here's a big thing that I want to do. I want to commit to it. I want to get going on it. And you're feeling a little paralyzed around moving forward on that. And I've got a simple process, deceptively simple, as is the way with my stuff, that can help you decide whether you're going to step forward or not. And I'm going to do this live with you, LJ. We haven't rehearsed this, so I'm curious to know. I know exactly. But tell me, if you're up for it, tell me a big thing that you've got coming up. I mean, I think I know what your answer is to this, actually, but tell me what the big thing is that you've got looming.
Yeah, so the big thing I have looming is that I have a new book coming out in April, and the
Mhm.
the complicating factor is that I'm going into it now knowing what the stakes are. The last
Right.
time I put a book out, it was my first time I had no idea.
Yeah. Yeah. So, am I right in thinking that the what you're looking to do is like do a full on book launch? Is that the big thing?
I wanna be under the oak tree with Oprah, MBS. I wanna make a splash.
Nice. That is great. And I'll just say that, as someone who's put out a bunch of books, book launches are really hard and demoralizing, and you're already exhausted because you spent 2 years pouring your heart and soul into writing a book. And then you kind of, at least I find I'm like, oh, nobody's going to want to read this book anyway. And there's
You're
so
like, "Hey, world, judge me. Now that
exactly.
I'm weak and you're seeing my soft underbelly, now please judge me."
Exactly. So let me take you through a process. And what I'd love for people to do, and you can work in the comments or just work taking notes, whatever works for you, is if you've got a big thing coming up, it doesn't have to be quite as big and as neat as a book launch like LGO's got going on, but something that matters for you. Let me take you through a decision-making process so you can weigh up whether to step forward or not. So I always go, look, you've got this choice. Do you do it or do you not do it? I mean, it's all very Yoda Star Wars here. There is no try. You're either going to be fully committed to the book launch or you're not. So let's imagine, and this is counterintuitive, but let's imagine that you decide not to do a full-on book launch. Like you've said you want to do it, but I'm just going to pull you to the other side. You're like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to opt out of that. Seems like a good idea, but screw it. Every choice you make has prizes and punishments, wins and losses, risks and reward. I like prizes and punishments, but you can pick whatever language works for you. The first question I ask is, what are the prizes? What are the advantages of not doing this thing? So for everybody in the comments, you're welcome to answer this as well. But LGO, let me put you on the spot. Imagine you decide to just, you put out an email or two to your list, but really not do much more than that. What are the advantages of that for you?
Yeah, there's a great quote. I think it was Eleanor Roosevelt who said, "We would worry much less about what other people thought of us if we realized how seldomly they did." So I don't think
Yeah,
anybody would care. I don't think anyone would notice. I don't think anybody's sitting at their computer going, "When is her book going to drop? I can't
right.
wait to read it." I mean, if you're one of those people, I love you. Thank you. We're best friends. But yeah, I think the prize is that I would let go of all of that stress and worry and anxiety and uncertainty and
Brilliant.
identity crushing imposter syndrome.
I love that. So that's a rich
Sounds pretty good,
answer.
actually. Maybe I'll
It does. And that, and actually the insight is you going, that sounds pretty good, because
Mhm.
you're understanding that the status quo has a much stronger pull on you than you realize.
Yes.
You underestimate how just we like our comfort of where we are right now. Let me ask you, this is my favorite coaching question. And what else? What else would you get from half-assing a book launch?
Well, am I not doing it or am I just half-assing it? Those are 2 different questions, right?
Let's
So
say half-assing it, because you're going to do some sort of book launch. You're going to put out a little bit, but let's just do it in a kind of a token way rather than a fully committed way.
I mean, what else? I would save money. I would
Yeah.
save time. I
Mm.
have my youngest child's about to, graduate from high school, so I would get back some of those hours of this like, precious time that I'm not to have any more of.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
sleep. Get more sleep.
exactly. Um, and for me, and you've already said this, but it's like not just the judgment of the readers, but it's also, you and I will be pitching people who run podcasts and write
Mhm.
articles, and there's a whole bunch of rejection that happens with that as well.
Yes, Lucy says not being exposed. I would not be exposed. Yes.
Exactly.
Oof.
And
You're
one of
talking
the
me.
things that we always face when we're up to a big challenge is like the comfort of the status quo, the comfort of the now. But there's a price you would pay if you chose to half-ass a book launch. So what's the cost to you and the cost to us if you half-ass it?
Regret. Haunting
Right.
regret. Always wondering, could I have, should I have, what if I did, what could it have been?
Yeah.
Just never quite being able to let go of wondering and having that reinforce every single time I see somebody else do it and wondering, God, it could have been me.
And what's the price we would pay the world? if you half-assed your book launch?
Oh God. Well, now you're saying right to my imposter syndrome where I'm like, well, I mean, I think I have this really good idea that I'm hoping is worthy of the world. And I've put out the TEDx that's gotten all of this response. And people are like, oh, finally a word for that feeling I never would know it was. So like the
Yeah.
way that people's eyes light up when I tell them about this idea and they go, that's me.
Yeah.
I would lose that and I would be stealing it, I think, from everyone else.
There's great research about women negotiating salaries and how this is what what you were saying, and when you introduced Ozan, which is like women will typically under negotiate for themselves, men will ask for the full enchilada. Statistically, broadly speaking, it changes when women negotiate for their families rather than for themselves. And why I wanted to ask not just what's the price you'd pay, but the price the world would pay, is I want you to understand and connect to what we miss out on. I know when I was doing the coaching habit, I was like, I did 2 years marketing for that because I'm like, this is a good book. People need this book. This isn't even about me, and it's not even about my book. It's about helping people. And that was a great breakthrough.
So you're saying it's my responsibility, huh?
Here's the other question to ask, which is this. So now imagine you are fully committed to this book launch. You are all in. You're going full LGO on this thing. Prizes and punishments. What's the prize for being fully committed to the adventure?
Oh boy. I mean, here's the thing. Like, I think the prize is something I don't even know exists yet, right? Like, I think the prize is making more money. It's more media. It's being invited onto bigger stages. It's being able to be invited to do incredible summits with you and Ozan. It's just being able to learn from other people that are on the same path. But I do think every time we achieve something, we get to see doors we don't even know are available to us. And I think for me, the prize of like what's behind door number 3 is actually like, it's both exciting and also scary because I don't know what it is, but I want it.
Yeah. What I'm also hearing, just because of your answer to the first question, is also like there's no sense of regret that you didn't give it your best shot.
Right.
Because one of the things that you're pointing to is you don't even know how this will play out. And it's also true that you may give everything to this launch and the book still may not take off. It's just the way of the world with books. But at least you can go, well, there's nothing that I didn't do for this book not taking off. It's just that sometimes books land and sometimes they don't land.
Yeah.
But let me ask you the final part of the question, which is like, but what's the price you pay for this full commitment? Like prizes and punishments. What's the punishment for this?
Soul-crushing rejection.
Yeah, exactly. That's what's at risk. So now you've got this moment where you're just better attuned, and you can see how quickly we did this, like 8 minutes. But you're now better at. So I'm saying that so to everybody listening to go, you can just do this formula pretty quickly by yourself. It's helpful though to talk it through with people like LGO and I doing. But you've just now got a better sense of the cost and the opportunity cost and the risk and reward, the prizes and punishments for not doing it and for doing it. And what you're hoping, what will happen is one of those choices will feel better than the other one, for more right than the other one. And it's okay if that choice is to not do the thing that you've been playing with. That's part of what you're doing here. You're actually trying to weigh this up. But I'm curious to know how this has landed for you, Elgio. I mean, when you look at prizes and punishments, are you thinking to yourself, maybe I will half-ass this launch? Save money, save time, save sleep, hang out with your youngest child and their final years at high school. There's a lot of good things that you'd get if you didn't do this. But I'm wondering where it's landed for you.
I mean, well, the first way it's landed for me is that I'm now going to put into my introduction that I'm one of 2 people who've been coached live by Michael Bungay Senior, me and Brene Brown. It makes, I'm basically Brene now.
You're basically
I know you've coached a lot more people live than that, but I guess for me, what I'm thinking is now, okay, so I should figure out what do I do, worst case scenario, if there is soul crushing rejection. And if I know what to do with that, then I could move forward because everything else is gravy, right? Everything else is prize.
Yeah.
So I think I have to go to school because the prizes sound really good and I want them. I really want them. It felt good saying them.
I felt that.
But I think I just need to figure out how to handle the possible punishment And once I know
Right.
that, then everything else it's not as scary.
Yeah. Thank you. Joe, thank you for
Thank
doing this
you.
live with me. I really appreciated that. We're about to move into our sponsor break, and it's going to be a fun sponsor break. But while I set that up, what was most useful or most valuable for you from this little piece of teaching, this coaching with LGO and me, and this decision around prizes and punishments for not doing the thing and then for doing the thing? What, if anything, was helpful with that? So while you're putting that in the chat, let me set up this section. We have I guess you call it a media sponsor, a partner who's helped promote this. It's the Next Big Idea Club. And we were pretty excited because you can see along the bottom there, this is something that is co-created with Adam Grant and Susan Cain and Malcolm Gladwell and Dan Pink. And, I kind of aspire to be all of those people combined when I grow up. So to be part of this kind of a collection of people and this commitment to new ideas, the next ideas and the next books is really significant for us. And one of the bonuses you'll get, as well as the chapters, as well as the courses that we're going to talk about, is that you'll get an offer to join the Next Big Idea Club as well. We're going to spend just 2 minutes telling you about each of our new books, because we're all, honestly, the blood, sweat, and tears that goes into writing books, it's a lot. So we're going to boast about them for 2 minutes. So LGO, you've hinted at what Wonderhell is. Give me 2 minutes on the essence of Wonderhell. Why is this an important book?
Yeah, well, so I mean, here's a meta moment. I'm sort of in Wonderhell about Wonderhell, right? So, those moments where you've done something, you felt a little bit of success. Maybe you've, gotten a promotion, or you sold the big deal, or maybe you've sold your first tube of lipstick. It can be big, it can be small, but you feel it and you're like, oh, that feels pretty good. I want more of that. Like, that's amazing. It's exciting. It's humbling. It's wonderful. But as soon as you say, I want more of that, you're like, what's on the other side? What's behind door number 3? And you feel the burden, you feel the potential, you feel the pressure, the anxiety, the uncertainty, the soul crushing worry about rejection. And you go, wow, it's not just wonderful. It's also kind of hell. It's wonderful and it's hell. It's kind of wonder hell. And wonder hell is that space in your psyche where the burden of potential walks in and goes, hey, MBS. What you got for me? Hey, honey, what you got for me? Are you going to live into this newfound you that you didn't even know existed last week, last month, or last year? Or are you going to let it walk by? And this is the subject of the TEDx that you mentioned earlier. When I found myself in Wonderhell after my last book came out, I tried to figure out a way out of it. And what I realized by interviewing 100 different people, Olympic medalists, startup unicorns, glass ceiling shatterers, and everyday people like you and me and all the amazing people on this call, what I realized is that there's no way out of it. You have to learn how to get comfortable in it. It's not about surviving it, it's about thriving in it. So the book talks about all these different ways where all of these people who at every level, at every turn, at every phase, and at every age found themselves with crushing imposter syndrome, doubt, uncertainty, and overwhelm. And it talks about how they learned how to look forward to it, to learn from it, and to thrive in it instead.
Perfect. Well, LGO has not yet asked me to blurb this book, and that's fine. I can handle it.
I think what I did is I told you I'd blurb your last one because I'm already counting on you blurbing my next one, and you said already done. I have that email, man.
All right.
That email.
Why don't we bring up Ozan and you ask him about his new book?
Ozan, tell me all about your new book, Awaken Your Genius.
I actually have the galley right here. It just arrived last week.
Exciting.
So
it's
cool
like everybody getting a galley is just like one of those great moments as an author. Everything becomes a bit real. So that is super cool.
It's so cool to, like, as you said, Michael, to put 2 years of your life into something like this and then to actually see it in physical form. It's an incredible feeling. So the book is called Awaken Your Genius. The subtitle is Escape Conformity, Ignite Creativity, and Become Extraordinary. And I call the book Awaken Your Genius because we tend to think that geniuses are a different breed, right? Genius, we often use the term to mean most talented or the most intelligent, but genius can be awakened in anyone. There's a quote I love from Thelonious Monk. He says, genius is the one most like himself. And in the Latin origin of the word genius, the word actually means the spirit attendant at birth in each and every person. So the book is a set of strategies and tools for awakening your inner genius, unlocking your own originality, and unleashing your unique capabilities. And one of the reasons I wrote the book is this realization that, and this is true for everyone, you are the first and the last time that you'll ever happen. Like, no one can compete with you at being you. And if what you're building is a product of your inner wisdom, if what you're putting out into the world is coming from within, you're going to be in a league of your own. But if you don't claim that wisdom within, if you copy and paste what other people are doing, if you conform to what the society expects you to do, that wisdom is going to be lost both to you and to the world. And so the book is a series of tools for unearthing that inner wisdom and giving birth to your inner genius, the universe center that you're meant to be.
That sounds so good. Well, Ozan, I'm going to invite you to.
And yeah, there we go. Let me segue
tell us
into that.
about
I
your
totally dropped
book.
the ball there. I was like,
I thought you'd never ask.
Next. I'm like, well, Michael, yes, tell us about your book, How to Work with
Almost anyone. Exactly. Okay, so let me tell you about why I wrote this book. I think our working relationships just are significant contributors to our happiness. I know I've had people I've worked with and I'm like, you are sucking my soul out. And even though I quite like the work, this is miserable. People join organizations, they leave bosses. I've also had people I work with where I'm like, this is joyful. I love working with you. But what everybody watching this doesn't know, that behind the scenes, I've got MBS's team. I've got Ainsley, I've got Cindy, I've got Amanda, I've got Claudine, I've got Sarah, and these are people who bring me joy working with them as we help them out. But we don't. We tend to just kind of go, oh, I'll cross my fingers and hope this person is okay to work with. And I was like, you know what? You can be more actively engaged in actually managing the relationship. So what this book shares is something called the Keystone Conversation, which is like, how do you have a conversation about how we will work together rather than just rushing into what we're going to work on? And when you have a conversation about how will we work together, it creates more safety and it creates more vitality and it creates more repairability in the relationship. And if you can have all of your key relationships be safer and more vital and more repairable, then you'll be happier and you'll get better work done. So there's my book. That's coming out in June next year. It's not, I'm still writing it, honestly. I'm giving you an excerpt from the book as a bonus, but I literally just sent a new draft to my editor yesterday. So my version is going to be slightly rougher than Ozan and LGO's wonderful books. All right, we're on to the final teaching session. Actually, the penultimate teaching session, because then we're going to do a threesome at the end where we're going to talk about how do you find your people. And Ozan and LGO have some particularly wise words around that. I'm going to set up LGO leading a session supported by Ozan. And it's really building on how she introduced Wonderhell, which is like, how do you navigate success when you're even in success? It just brings up all sorts of other specters of failure. It brings up that specter of, am I living up to my potential? You know, I honestly, the coaching habit came out 6 years ago. I stepped away from being the CEO of Box of Crayons, the company I founded 3 years ago. And most of that time, I wouldn't say it's all been Wonderhell, but it's certainly been a time of searching, going, well, what is my contribution? How do I be the best version of myself? Because somehow I've already become a successful author with the coaching habit. Is it just that again? Is it different? What am I really ambitious for? How do I step up to be not just unlock my greatness by working on hard things, but also make the contribution that I really want to make to this world in a way that I can do the best I can? Because as Ozan said, like, this is it. This is the one shot at Michael Bungay's tenure. This never happens again. So how do I do that? And LGO is going to explain why. Over to you, LGO.
Okay, so Ozan, I want to start with you, and we can keep MBS here on the screen if he wants to answer this question as well, but I want to hear from you. Where did you first get your definition of success? When you were young, when you were thinking about who you wanted to be, what you wanted to be when you grew up? And people who are in the chat, I'd love to hear this from you too. But MBS, let's take you first, and then we'll keep Ozan here on the hot seat.
Okay. You know, that's a very interesting question. I think the definition of success that landed most for me came from my dad, and it was about his integrity around contribution. In a very quiet way, he was a man of great service and of volunteering, and he just gave a lot to his, particularly at a kind of local level. And that, I think, has become the deepest definition of success for me.
Okay, so it wasn't about what you should be, but it was about how you should be as a person.
Yeah, my parents were very confused about me as their oldest child. They're like, we can give you no advice about who you can be because who are you? You're an alien to us.
Okay, okay. Ozan, tell us how about you? What did you want to be when you grew up? And where did that definition come from?
I think I got conflicting definitions of success from different people. Like for my grandfather had a very healthy definition of success, which was following your curiosity. So if you're following your curiosity, if you're following what's bringing you alive, if you're following that internal drive, then you're succeeding in life. But then I started school, and all of a sudden, it all became about external achievement.
Yes.
It all became about doing well in exams. It all became about, getting into the right colleges, getting the right jobs. And I think I completely lost touch with that from my perspective, the better definition of success that my grandfather had inculcated in me, and instead picked up these other definitions that focus on external metrics.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I had the same thing where, I sort of grew up with this idea of like, do unto others, be a good person, be kind, all of as Michael was saying, how you should be. But then the rest of the world started coming in, right? And you get like the fourth grade teacher who tells you like, you're argumentative, you should be a lawyer. Or you get the parent who's telling you, who you should marry and what kind of life you should have. And you get the boss that's telling you, to think about the profit and loss statement and all of those things. And so as you've grown through your life, how have you come to the definition what is the definition you have today and how have you come to it?
I think for me, and I'm still a work in progress, by the way, this is one of the things that I still
It's the right answer,
deeply.
by the way.
Yeah, it's reconnecting to that original definition. The definition of like going through my day and asking myself, am I doing what's bringing me alive? Like this thing that I'm working on today, am I following my own curiosity? Am I putting out art into the world and work into the world that's going to contribute? And that's going to be valuable to me as a writer and also valuable to those who are reading it or who are watching it. But then, especially with a book launch coming up, all of these external metrics begin to creep in. X amount of pre-orders or bestseller lists. So the world does its best to push you away from those internal drivers of success into external metrics. And that's how I've lived my life, was like moving from one achievement to the next, from one thing to the next, and like taking one mountain and then not even like patting myself on the back and immediately just looking at the horizon to see like what other mountain I can take. And that left me feeling exhausted. And it also left me feeling like I didn't feel grateful enough for what had just happened because I was too busy trying to fulfill somebody else's metric for success as opposed to following my own.
Oh, I couldn't have said it better myself. I'm looking at some of the comments here and you are not alone. I'm seeing, hi, Kathleen saying success is high pressure achievement to get ahead in a ruthless world, being smarter than everybody else. I'm seeing people saying that it's about financial security. It's about, your parents giving you a certain definition that it comes from being a good employee. And I think that's what happens. I spent 20 years, as I mentioned earlier, doing executive search, and I was hired by my clients to call the most successful people in the world and recruit them away to come work for them. And it sounds like kind of a hard job, except despite all this success, which is why I was calling them, they were all calling me back because they weren't very happy. And these were people who on paper, I mean, they looked like you, Ozan. They had everything. They were successful. They had great education. They were financially secure. They were doing all of the things that we are envious about. We want to do, ourselves in our careers. And yet, even though they were checking all the boxes and the boxes were all full, they still felt empty. So let me tell you a little bit about the 4 things that I learned actually created not just success, but true happiness. These were the handful of people that over thousands of individuals I wasn't able to actually recruit away. And I want to ask you, which one of these resonates most with you now? And you can give me an answer if you want with what resonates with you most with you now, and maybe what resonated with 10 years ago and what might resonate with you 10 years from now. Because at every age and at every life stage, our definitions are going to be different. But the problem is when we're 15, 16, 17 years old, somebody's like, pick a major, pick a trade, pick a job, pick a school. And you go, okay, right? And if you continue to be the person you were when you were 17 years old and went to Cornell and studied astrophysics, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing now. And think about the adventure you'd be missing. So we have to allow ourselves the grace to continue to change that definition. So I'm going to tell you the 4 factors that I learned actually give us both success and happiness. And I want to hear from you, and I want to hear from everyone in the chat, which one of these 4 is most interesting to you at this moment. So the first is calling. And calling is, as you mentioned, that gravitational force. It's the thing that gets you out of bed in the morning. It's what excites you. It's a leader you want to serve. It's a mission that inspires you. It's a family you want to nurture. It's a business you want to build. It's a cause that you want to serve. It is something that is truly interesting to you. And we think our calling has to be one thing. He's got a calling. We can have lots of callings in our lives. So I would ask you to think about this in terms of your purpose. Not higher or lofty. By the way, if there are people on this call, if you say, my calling is to make $1 bajillion and buy a beach house and a Maserati, that's totally cool too. I'm not going to give you any purpose shaming. I'm just saying, reach out to me in the DMs because I'm a good house guest. But your calling is your calling, pure and simple. So is it that thing? Do you want this feeling of I am part of something bigger? Is that what's interesting to you most now? Number 2 is connection. And connection answers that question. Does the work I'm doing actually matter? What if I didn't go back to work at the end of the summit? What if I just didn't show up tomorrow? Would anybody notice? Would anybody care? And this is when you have to look at what's in your inbox, what's in your calendar, what's in your to-do list, and ask, are these things actually important to me? Does getting to inbox 0 get me closer to that calling? Or am I just getting closer to inbox 0? So is the work I'm doing actually connected to that calling I just said I wanted to serve? The last piece is contribution. And if connection's all about the work, contribution's really all about you. How does this work contribute to the kind of life you want to live, the kind of values you want to manifest on a daily basis, the kind of person that you want to be in the universe, the career trajectory that you want? How does this work contribute to the life that you want? And the last piece is control. Control is all about how much personal agency you have to actually make a difference in the work that you're doing, what teams that you're on, how you get rewarded for the work that you're doing, how you're measured by your own success at work itself. So at every stage, you might want or need different amounts of these. So if you're like, I just want to go in, do my work, leave, and hang out with my family, you won't need as much calling. But if you're like, I want to be part of something bigger, and I don't care if I get the coffee for the guy who gets the coffee, then it doesn't really matter about control. So all of us have a different definition. As I was mentioning this for, which of those sort of turned you on most?
Great question. And my answer definitely has shifted over time. I want to reflect back what you said about calling, because I think you made such an important point, Laura. You don't have to have a single calling.
Yes.
You can have multiple callings, and your calling might change over time. That's totally fine. People tend to think of like their calling as the North Star, but actually even the North Star shifts. In about 2,000 years, the star that's the North Star will no longer be the North Star. As long as you're following your curiosity and following what brings you alive, your calling can shift over time and you can have multiple ones. I think that's such an important point that I wanted to echo. For me, at this moment in time, it's connection for sure. It's connection because I just came from this period of spending the last 1.5 years writing this book. And writing is a really solitary process. And one of the things that I'm looking forward to with the book launch is the opportunity to talk to audiences like this, to engage with people, to actually put these ideas out into the world, to see what resonates and what doesn't. So I'm looking forward to giving keynotes and doing podcast interviews and engaging with readers on the road about the ideas in the book and learning from from everyone as well. That's definitely for me at this moment in time is the one that's resonating the most.
Oh, I love that. And I love how you said it's what's resonating me at this moment in time. And if you look in the comments, what you're going to see is that we've got calling, we've got connection, we've got contribution, we've got control. Everyone has a different definition. And the problem is when we look at somebody else's definition from outside, they're going to say, oh, well, what's really going to make you happy at work is if you just, clear your inbox, or if you make every meeting not 60 minutes, but 45 minutes, or not 30 minutes, but 20 minutes. And everyone's got a system, right? So the problem is, this section's all about how do you navigate success, but it's got to start with how do you define success for yourself in the first place? Because, I've never been a rocket scientist, but I know as sure as you know that the North Star is not going to be the North Star in 2000 years, which that's a little terrifying. You can't be insatiably hungry for someone else's goals. And you cannot navigate all of what we talked about, the imposter syndrome and the crushing doubt and the uncertainty and the fear and the I'm not quite ready. How do I trust myself? Unless you are actually going after somebody that matters to you, right? So if the thing doesn't matter to you, then it's not worth it. So, you talked about having, going out and giving more doing more speaking events and spending more time sort of out in the world and not being solitary anymore. To use Michael's terminology, there's prizes and punishments that come with that. So when you are out in the world, you're going to be sacrificing certain things on the home front. Does knowing that that is the thing that's important to you now and how you define success in that way now, does that help make it more palatable for some of the sacrifices that you have to use or that you have to make?
No, for sure. I think that's a really important point is, you look at that list of punishments in Michael's terminology, and yes, there's definitely going to be some items there. Like I'm going to miss my wife and I'm going to miss our dogs. But the internal drive, the internal belief in the book and the ideas in the book is so strong that I can, the possibility of rejection in comparison to that internal drive just pales in comparison, right? And that was the story I told about the 17-year-old version of me. It was the same thing. Like the possibility of rejection, imposter syndrome, all of those voices were really loud. But what was louder was that internal drive, that internal knowing of I really want this and I don't care if I get rejected. And yes. I don't care if this podcast interview doesn't land, or I don't care if this keynote bombs, because it's more important to me at this moment in time to get these ideas out into the world.
Yes. So, this calling of this thing that you want to do, the new keynotes that you want to be giving, all the work, putting the message out into the world, but also the contribution, right? What is this going to mean for you as you're moving forward? So I would say that as we're looking through the comments, everyone has a different answer. And I'm seeing some people saying it's this now, it's that then. So there are 4 areas, as I mentioned: calling, connection, contribution, and control. Should I tell people where they can go to learn more, MBS?
Actually, we're going to send them the link to that. So we've got that, and you've seen people have seen scrolling along the bottom the link to get all the bonuses, including your quiz, which is like how do you take the quiz to figure out which of those 4 C's is most real for you. Now, I want to move us on a little bit because it's been fun. I'm not sure. I know you're both dog lovers. I mean, if you want to follow, if you want Doberman love, you follow LGO's Instagram. I'm not sure what dogs you have. I know one of your dogs has been barking, and that's awesome. It's the perfect segue to what the next thing is about, which is, we're talking about all of this stuff about trusting ourselves. Who am I to do this? What can I learn? How do I make the best decisions? But one of the things that I think is deeply true is that you shouldn't travel alone in life, and in doing this work that is the work that you're trusting yourself to do. And even though we all nod our head and go, that's true, there's this epidemic of kind of loneliness and isolation right now. People are, the numbers about the statistics on the people who have a close friend, the numbers are dropping. It's worse for men than it is for women. And one of the things that I think is true about the two of you for sure is that you've thought about how do you bring the right people in your life and around you to support you in this. Some of the work we do is lonely, it's book writing, but a lot of the work we do is not. So LJ, let me start with you, as this is and this is the 4th piece of teaching, which is like, so where do you find your people? Like, I want to trust myself, but I want to have people around me to remind me to trust myself. So LGO, I mean, you literally had a career and built a company around executive search. How do you bring that wisdom into how you create your own spheres of people?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned in the very beginning, there were never candidates who were perfect, right? So, that meant that all of us are somewhere on a continuum. And
Mm,
what I came to understand is that at every moment of my life, I was somewhere on a continuum and everyone else was on their continuum, which meant that when I was smack in the middle, there were people who were further ahead than me and there were further who were not quite where I was yet. And so what I realized was that my inner circle had to have all three of those types of people. I needed somebody to whom I could aspire, or multiple people to whom I can aspire. So I could call them up, I could ask questions, I could get advice, I could, get a smack sometimes when I needed it. If the people who don't let you settle for mediocrity. I also needed somebody or a couple people who were peers. And those were people who were like on the struggle bus with me, the people that I could complain about or to
mm.
complain to about what was happening in my life. I could also just learn, figure out what they were doing. We could just sort of be in the foxhole together. And then I needed people that weren't quite where I was yet. And the reason I needed those people was I think the best way to get past imposter syndrome is to teach something that you know. Because when you
Right.
teach you teach someone something that you are reinforcing not just how well you know it, but that you actually know things. And to see their eyes light up and to see you as a resource makes you realize that you've actually got stuff to offer. So I've always tried to keep a sort of inner circle, which it sort of ebbs and flows, but it's people that are sort of all around where I am on my own continuum.
How do you, I mean, that's a great way of kind of thinking. Do I have somebody who can teach me? Do I have a peer? Do I have somebody I can teach? But how do you find those people? How do you reach out to those people? I mean, literally have you built that inner circle? Because my experience of you, LGO, is you are a person who has a pretty rich, diverse network of relationships.
So I've always believed that if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. But I've also believed that you can be the best learner in the room. So I like to put myself in a room of people that are way smarter than I am. And then I like to collect what they know. And then I like to actively share it. So I
Mm.
think you and I first met when we were in a Facebook group of speakers. And somebody had posted something where they had a question about how they were handling something in their contract. And I was like, well, actually, I need to learn how to handle stuff in my contract. And I've given precisely one keynote in my entire life. So let see what all these other people who have given hundreds have to say. So everybody was volunteering to show samples of their
Mm.
contracts. So I just looked at all of them and then I made a Google Doc and I was like, okay, 80% of the people handle this issue this way and 10% handle it this way. And here's one interesting that somebody is doing that handles it this way. And I just created a doc and it was super anonymous about who was doing what. And I just shared it. So
Right.
abundance mentality. And what I started to notice was that there were other people in the group who were doing things just like that. I think that if you put yourself in a position where you can share and you see who reacts with additional abundance mentality, like when you said no to me about blurbing my book, you said, but how else can I help you? And then you spent 45 minutes on the phone, generously talking to this random stranger.
I should have said yes to blurbing the book. It would have been much more efficient.
It would have been so much more efficient. But you spent
Not think
45
that's
minutes telling me all the things that frankly are in this unbelievable blog post you'd already written. And you could have just been like, read my blog post, see you later. But you spent time with me. And so I was like, he's an abundance minded person. And so I made sure to always pull you in and bring you into things. So I think being abundance minded and also recognizing who else is like that is a
Mm.
great way to build that inner circle.
You know, one of the things that I'm taking or being reminded of by what you're sharing here, LGO, is a saying somebody told me, which is like, nobody likes to be the first person to say hello. Everybody likes to be greeted. And so there's this
Yes.
way to kind of like, if you're the person that goes, hey, hi, awkward, I know, but hi, it was like, oh, and we're off to something interesting. I think that's a very nice way of thinking about building a bridge.
Can I just say one other thing? If you notice that people are not abundance minded, but they are take,
Yeah,
you can drop them. It's okay.
yeah,
You can unfollow them in real life.
exactly. Ozan's dead to me after this whole summer. We're done. No, seriously, Ozan. I mean, Ozan, your background, of course, is as a scientist, and you think when I think one of the images of a scientist is kind of like this mad guy or woman in a white coat alone in a lab late at night. But actually, when you see, for instance, the Mars rovers, you always see huge collections of people working together. So I suspect you've got your own insight about what does it take to build a team? What does it take to build the right people around you? You're not always in a jet propulsion lab, but you might have insight around how do you find the best people to support you on a journey. What would you share?
The myth of the lone genius that you just described, Michael, of the crazy person in a lab coat working alone by themselves for hours is just a myth. Like it just doesn't exist. Optimal creativity doesn't happen in complete isolation, and that was certainly true. The Mars project I worked on, it brought together all of these brilliant minds, scientists and engineers. And here's the important part: they did not think alike. So there's that cliche, great minds think alike, which I completely disagree with. I actually think great minds don't think alike.
Yeah.
Great minds also don't think alone. And so those two pieces are really important. You don't think alone and you don't think alike. And so for me, when I think through who I'm going to bring into my inner circle, I want people who share my values, but who don't share my thoughts. So it's so like a community of the unlike-minded. And so I might ask value questions like, are they going to be transparent? Are they going to be open to unconventional ideas? Are they going to skip small talk? I can't do small talk. Like, can we just go to what's actually interesting and what matters? Yeah. And so once you're checking out those boxes, if you are checking them, then it's like, okay, the values are aligned. And if we don't have the same perspective on an issue, that means I can learn from you. Because I've got nothing to learn from someone who thinks exactly the way I do, right? It's like two mirrors reflecting each other into infinity. And so then it becomes a challenge to find those people into the world. And by the way, communities like this and events like this are a great way to make connections. So I love that. I saw some people in the comment section trading social media handles and email addresses and whatnot. I really encourage that because you're now among people who have been drawn to a similarly themed event. And so there's a high likelihood that you are going to be sharing similar values. And so finding people through events like this who are on a similar path of self-discovery, similar path towards self-trust is going to be really important.
Yeah, Kerry's got an interesting question, which is around, look, it's good to have a criteria by which you're looking for people, but where do you actually find them? I've got a point of view on this, but I'm curious to hear. Let's go LGO, then Ozan, around where do you find these people? I mean, how do you actually build the relationship?
Yeah, so I'll let you talk about how to find them because I think you've got a pretty great answer on this. I want to talk about a bit of a mindset thing, which is that we have this idea that all these people who we'd love to learn more about and talk to and have a relationship with are so important and so much smarter than us and don't have time for us and are so busy. But look at me and MBS, right? I reached out to him, didn't know him at all. I thought what he was doing was super cool. I loved his writing. I found him curious. I found him interesting. I find him to be just a fun and generosity-minded person. So I just reached out. And here we are years later, and we've got this great friendship and a great professional relationship. So I just want to say, before everyone else answers, how do you find them? I just want to say, we are all alone and we are all weird and we are all awkward and we are all available. And if somebody's not, they'll say no, but there's 10 more people. So I just want to say, just don't think somebody's better than you and you can't reach out to, try to talk to them because everybody is looking. I mean, Ozan just said he's been alone for the last 2 years writing this book. We're all looking for connection always.
Ozan, do you have a way you bring new people into your life and kind of have an experience of them so that they perhaps become part of an inner circle?
I think two things. One is in-person events. I do look for events like meetup groups, for example, around topics that I'm interested in, and then I'll go to conferences on topics that I'm interested in. And those are great places to meet people. And so there's a lot of focus on online communities, which can be great. But I think now that travel is coming back, it's also important to be able to connect in person and to really get to know people in person through those events. So I look for events like that. They're going to bring together a community of unlike-minded people. And then in terms of reaching out to people online, I try to find people who are going through similar stuff. So like my last book came out at the height of the pandemic, had to scrap my book tour, completely go back to start from first principles and rebuild the whole thing because everything had to be scrapped. I found authors who were in a similar position as me, who also had a book launch scheduled during the pandemic, and then reached out to all of them saying, look, we're on the same boat. Let's figure out a way to do some events together to get the word out about our books. And so looking for people who are on a similar journey or who are undergoing similar problems online is also really helpful.
Let me give you the thing I'm doing at the moment, trying to strengthen relationships. So I'm now old enough that I seem to know a lot of people a tiny, tiny bit. But what with COVID and online life and just life, I just like, I don't have that many people who I would call inner circle. I have a lot of people who I'd call outer circle. So when I'm back in Toronto, I host a dinner once a week, roughly, Wednesday nights. And what I did is I wrote to like 200 people who lived in Toronto who I knew a tiny bit. Some of the people I didn't know at all. I'd never even met them. I just like, you're interesting, and I've got your email from LinkedIn. And we have 3-person dinners, me plus 2 other people. I use Calendly, so it's a bit serendipitous as to who actually shows up. I don't control that. I control the initial set that I'm curating from, but then I'm like, okay, me plus 2 other people. And then we have a dinner designed, Ozan, you'd like this. There's no small talk. The opening thing is, tell me 2 essential things about yourself. And we introduce ourselves with 2 essential things, which is quite a juicy question because it's like, okay, what is essential about who I am? And then I have 5, every dinner I come up with 5 interesting questions that are meant to push beyond superficiality into a kind of interesting conversation. And the first person chooses a question, and then the 3 of us will answer that one question. Like, what's the sacrifice you have to make? What's the lesson you keep having to learn? What's the crossroad that you're at? And then the second person picks one of the remaining 4 questions, and the 3 of us answer it. And that's it. That's all we've got time for over dinner together. And it's been such a nice way of just deepening my knowledge of who I know in this world. Nobody's become my super best buddy out of that, but lots of people have moved from I kind of know you to I'd invite you out for a drink again, for sure. So that's my tip on how to deepen some relationships, which is be the host. Read Priya Parker's book, be a host and bring people together. I figured out me plus 2 other people is my ideal number, but you may have different ways of doing that.
So I want to just say for the record that I'm really hungover right now. I spoke to 1,000 people in Kansas City yesterday, so I have an introvert hangover. You ever get an introvert hangover from any of those things? You're like, I peopled all day long yesterday.
Yeah.
I got to people again. I'm so hungover. I can't people. I have an introvert hangover. So Michael, I know that you are a raging introvert like me. Ozan, are you an introvert or an extrovert?
Introvert for sure.
Introvert. So here we are, 3 introverts talking about how to create inner circles and how to create relationships, right? So I think we should shout out the introverts in the room because I think, Michael, the thing that you just said is so brilliant. When you are a host, you actually don't have to do as much talking because you're just facilitating the conversation. So it's like you're talking about this great thing you're doing, but really it's this like introvert jujitsu move where you can actually be the life of the party without actually dancing on the table. And I think that's awesome. I will tell you the introvert trick I use, which is that before I go to a live event, a cocktail party, a dinner, a conference, anything, I figure out somebody else who's going to be there, who's going to be my wingman. And I'm like, or my wingwoman, I'm like, you're cool. People are going to come up and talk to you. So I'm just going to stand next to you. And then you'll introduce me to people and I'll get to meet everybody, but I can do it from standing in the same corner, right? I don't actually go anywhere. So I think we should also mention that even if you're an introvert, you can still create some of those relationships.
So look, our work here is almost done. I'm going to tell you what you're getting as bonuses. You're going to get some emails that will follow up from us, which are just kind of a reminder about who we are and a reminder of the bonuses you're getting. You've heard us all say that you're getting chapters from our brand new books. Implicit in that, the subtext is, if you like the chapter, perhaps you'll pre-order the books because we're very excited by pre-orders as authors. So we're hoping that you're kind of interested and engaged in that. We've all each designed an additional bonus for you as well. LGO, yours is the 4-question quiz. Just give us a minute on that.
Yeah. So if you were listening to me talking about calling, connection, contribution, and control, and you're like, I don't know, I'm not sure, which one do I want? What do I do when I figure out how much more I need? There are 4 questions you need to ask yourself, and you can find those 4 questions at my4questions.com.
Perfect. Ozan, you've got a bonus as well. What's your bonus?
It's a 15-minute audio training that you can easily listen to with 3 simple strategies that you can use to make giant leaps in work and life. So just 3 simple ideas. And these are strategies that I use on a regular basis. And I recorded that audio to share them with you.
Perfect. And you can see the link if you're like, I need to get this immediately. It's scrolling along the bottom there, but you'll get all of this in an email following up from us. I've also got an audio bonus for you as well. It's about 15 or 20 minutes, I think. And it's about the 4 questions that I ask and answer every single day as a way of just continuing to learn to trust myself, continuing to figure out what to focus on, continuing to figure out what to be grateful for. So just simple questions, but I find very powerful as a kind of orientation to myself and to the world. Why don't we just say this as a final wrap up? We'll use my favorite wrap up question. I'm asking everybody in the comments, but I'm going to ask my co-host here as well. What was most useful or most valuable for you from this event? It's the first time we've done this. So we're kind of looking for feedback and encouragement amongst other things. But what was most useful or most valuable for you? What are you taking away from this? What do you know now that you didn't know before? Ozan, let me put you on the spot. What was most useful or most valuable for you?
I think thinking through the 4 C's that Laura mentioned and how useful that terminology is. And I'm actually going to do some reflection after this call too, to see how my definition of success has changed over time. There is power in being able to give a name to the metric of success that I'm following, and it is really cool to have seen it shift over time. So that's been one of the most valuable takeaways for me, for sure.
That's beautiful. How about you, LGO? What's your aha or your key takeaway from all of this?
Well, mine's sort of a combo platter. I took away exactly what scares me the most out of this book launch and what the demons are that I need to struggle with, that I need to confront. But I also took away that the best minds don't think alone, and that I need to get some people around me to sort of work through some of this to make sure that I'm ready and prepared for the worst so that I can get excited and plan for the best.
I love that. You know, for me, it's more of a meta takeaway, which was just the pleasure in co-creating and co-designing this with the 2 of you. You know, I came into this going, look, I want cool people who I want to hang out with. So that's another, you know, in terms of where do you find your people, I was like, I'm going to reach out to Ozan and LGO and see if we can set something up here. But just, you know, so often when I'm teaching alone. You know, it's me and a camera and I'm presenting to a group or in a room. And just how delightful it's been to work with both of you and kind of creating this, making it a gift of service to the world. And also us learning how to ask for people to buy our books. It's the first time we've done that out loud. So that as well. So thank you. I also wanted to give a thanks to the MBS.works team who've done a ton of work behind the scenes, and Justin, who's our producer, who you can tell we've done such a nice job at moving us around and putting us on the spotlight and putting things across the bottom. Part of what's kept your interest is the way Justin has kept the visual energy up in terms of how he's moved things around. So Justin, you've done a wonderful job as well. I think our work here is done. It is 4:30 in the morning here in Canberra, so you
need that wine bar.
I'm not going back to bed. But LGO, Ozan, it's been such a pleasure. And everybody, thanks for being part of this with us. It's lovely to work with you all.
Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for joining.
Bye, everybody.